Hello everyone. I hope you are having a good day and thank you for coming on this Saturday evening. So today we have Rohini with us. She's a senior developer advocate at AWS. Hi Rohini, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we today we would be having a session on getting started with AWS. That is your first hour on AWS. It is very crucial to know more about cloud computing and getting the all the things or all the services of AWS. So Rohini would be the best person here to tell all the participants about what is it, how to go on with the AWS.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Saksham.
So guys, till then just put hi over the chat so that we can see your energy, how you want to learn and all.
Yes, please. I am a very enthusiastic person, so please, I would love to see some energy there, not some crickets talking. And if you have any questions during the session, feel free to add them in the chat. I will try to monitor it in between, but if not, I will also try to take them towards the end. And it will give me a bit more energy to know that people are actually watching and people are understanding. If not, then I would have to, explain it in a better way. So let's get started, Saksham.
Yeah,
Can you share my screen?
sure.
Awesome. Thank you. So, yes, it's getting started with AWS or your first hour on AWS, whatever you want to call, we can call that. But before we get started with the session, I do want to tell everyone something about the hackathon itself that we are doing this webinar for. So the Smbhav hackathon, Amazon Smbhav hackathon is a month-long hackathon. You can find all the details on the link here, or you can just search for Amazon Smbhav hackathon and you can find the URL. And we have been doing these webinars. So there was one webinar that's already been done. So you can go and watch that after this session, not now. And there is another webinar that is going to come for serverless, where we're going to talk about serverless in detail. And Sushrit is going to serverless hero, AWS serverless hero, and he's going to talk about serverless in detail. So go ahead and subscribe to that one as well, so you don't miss that. And feel free to ask any questions to us right now, or or on the channels that I've mentioned here. You can also ask these questions there. So in this session, what I'm going to do is quickly talk about why cloud computing, why AWS. I will also talk about the global infrastructure for AWS. We'll also look at some of the production services from AWS, and I will also show you some demos in the AWS console. Uh, while I'm doing all this, I will also share a lot of tips and tricks. And if this is your first time having an AWS account, there are a lot of things that you'll try and share throughout the session. So have some paper and pen ready, or you can just go ahead, start taking screenshots maybe, or whatever works for you. And towards the end, I'll also share a lot more information on, hey, how do you go further? How do you train yourself? How do you go for certifications, and essentially what next, right? So before I go into the topic, this is me. Who am I? So actually, I've not updated this slide. I have been with AWS for last 7+ years now. Yeah, I completed my anniversary just recently, and I've done multiple roles in the AWS platform. Like in the company AWS, I've done multiple roles in different geographies, and been majority as a solutions architect. And I loved working with a lot of our customers directly. And just recently, last year, I decided, to move into a developer advocate role. It's more like talking about AWS, helping the community grow and understand the AWS platform, or understand technology, the cloud technology itself. Because all my learnings that I had from so many years, I just want to share it with a lot of you. And I like to talk to people, so please do reach out. Um, and via these charts. So let's get started with our topic for today. And the topic is definitely cloud computing, right? So in very short layman term, I want to explain what cloud computing is. And many of you may know cloud computing because cloud is the new normal right now, right? But I'll just give a pause. Saksham, can you go on mute, please? Because I can hear some fan
Sure,
noises.
sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, that was distracting me. But cloud computing, in a layman term or by definition, could be something that is delivered to you on demand, delivery of IT resources and applications. Now, IT resources here could be CPU or memory or databases or something with networking or something with security, anything that you would call as an IT resource, that or an application itself provided to you on demand. That is, for example, you could say electricity, right? Now, in your house, if you want to charge your phone, what would you do? You just plug it in, switch on the button, and you will charge your phone, right? You're not maintaining electricity grids, or you're not taking care of installing electricity grids, and and so on and so forth. What you're doing is you're plugging in your charger and you're turning it on, and you start having electricity in your house. Think of cloud computing in the same pattern, right? But with the IT resources and the applications we just talked about. So it is on demand delivery of IT resources via the internet with pay as you go pricing. Now, what is pay as you go pricing? Same as the electricity funda, right? You have a meter in your house, I mean, in your house and in your society, and that starts billing the moment you start consuming electricity. And a stupid joke, but yes, that's why our fathers keep harassing us like to switch off the fans when we leave a room, because we are paying for it. So the same principle applies to cloud computing. If you're not using something, just turn it off, and you will stop paying for it. So a lot of people will do that. If you're building something for the hackathon, please be aware of these things. Have an hygiene towards that. You're switching off items that you don't need, so that in the end of the month you don't get a shocking bill, right? So the next thing you would do is, so what is AWS, right? AWS is a cloud platform. Okay, so now we understood everything, right? But AWS is a broad and deep platform. And by broad, I will tell you what it means by broad, but we have 200 plus services on the AWS platform, right? So it's not just about infrastructure anymore. That was almost 10 years ago when I started working with cloud as a platform, right? It is a very broad platform that has everything for everyone. That's what I say, because it complements almost every other IT field that we know today, right? And what the platform does is it helps our customers build sophisticated, scalable as in if the demand keeps growing, they can start adding more capacity to their infrastructure or their applications, and their applications can start taking that much request and start replying to it, right? And you can build secure applications. We also have a couple of slides on security, so we'll see that, right? So the next thing is, why would customers choose AWS? Now, a lot of people ask this question, so I have this slide where I quickly tell why people choose AWS. The first thing is, gives you agility, right? Before cloud computing came in, or before something like AWS came in, people had to actually build their own data centers. Now, these companies or enterprises would have to buy a land or buy like a floor in some building, set up the because a lot of, like, imagine I have a MacBook here and it heats up like crazy. Imagine a data center, how much it must be heating up, right? So they had to actually set up a lot of cooling, they had to set up a lot of insulation so that the cooling stayed inside for these servers. They had to hire people to install these servers, they had to hire people for physical security, they had to purchase these servers and storage and the racks and the huge racks of servers they had to buy. They had to have people who would do the networking and cabling on the job, right? So it needed lots and lots of money to be invested to actually create a data center, which, if you think a normal startup or you and me who has simply an idea and we want to play with it, will not be able to do that, right? So what cloud computing did was, you don't have to worry about building that data center. What do you want to do? You want to have few servers, you want to have certain storage, you want to have certain databases, and you want to create your own applications. You want to implement that proof of concept of your idea, right? So you don't have to worry about having capital expenditure to create that data center. And this totally changed the way we were thinking about the way we were thinking about creating cloud computing, creating applications, right? And that's why lot of agility was brought to a lot of customers, because now they can experiment, they can innovate quite frequently, and if some idea doesn't work, they can just terminate all those machines or shut down all those machines and start fresh. A lot of cost savings, because it's a game of economy, right? So economies of scale. A lot of people will start using cloud. The more people use it, the more it grows. The more it grows, the better the savings are given back to our customers. So we do a lot of price reductions. And remember, I said no capital expenditure. And secondly, you pay for what you use, right? So you're not paying for a lot of things. So now your capex went into OPEX. The elasticity part, now you don't have to guess capacity. Like for example, you're building a game, right? And a lot of people, you don't know how many people are going to play this game. Thousands, 10,000s, a lakh people, a crore people, you don't know that. But when you start building it, you built it and you put it in the market, it may go so viral that lots of people want to now start using this game. Now if you were building your own data center, you would have to plan months ahead for having that capacity brought in, installed, and set up, and etc. But in cloud computing, you don't have to guess that kind of capacity. It is virtually unlimited. So you can now start, instead of 10 servers, you can ask it to start 100 servers. Or if you're going serverless, then it is just within AWS's functionality to scale as per your demand. The next is innovation. Definitely, innovation is something which is going to help a lot of customers focus on business differentiators rather than focusing on building infrastructure or data centers. Go global in minutes. Now you can have your workload or host your applications in anywhere across the world because it's over internet. You don't have to be sitting in US to build application for the US population, or to be sitting in US and doing it. You can sit in here and build applications that are running there for that population, or you could build applications that can be global in nature. So the service breadth and depth, right? There are 200 plus fully featured services, which we'll check out. Obviously, we are not covering 200 services. I'll just cover the few core services that we are going to discuss about today. So before we do that, I do want to tell you about the global infrastructure, right? What is AWS? Like, how big is AWS? Initially, when it started, we only had 4 regions across the world. And trust me, if you don't know what regions are, I am going to cover that. But when we started, the first 5 years, we only had 4 regions. But as the cloud started growing, and this was launched in 2006, as the cloud started growing, a lot of customers started seeing the benefits of moving to the cloud. We launched more regions in the next 5 years. We launched 7 more regions in the next 5 years. And in just last 4 5 years, we have launched 30 new regions. And we also have I should edit that slide. There is no more a local region. Osaka is now a full-fledged region itself. And there are 5 more regions coming in as well. So what is global infrastructure, right? Now we have a total 24 geographical locations across the world, and we have a lot of availability zones as well. And we have announced more regions. So in India today, we have something in Mumbai, but we have also announced Hyderabad as the next region for us in India. So what is the region design here, right? So think of this. Let me start explaining to you, like working backwards. Think of this as one data center. Okay. What happens if something fails in this data center? Like you have some kind of power or some kind of internet, and that fails, like that power fails, then what will happen to this data center? This data center will stop working. Now you could add redundancy. You could add power supply from a couple of different electricity providers. You could add power internet supply from different providers. But what if something goes wrong with the data center itself? What if it gets on fire? Right? You need to have some kind of way of having disaster recovery or backup or fault tolerance for that data center itself. So when we started about thinking about our regions and availability zone design, we thought we're not going to rely on just one data center. So if you see on the screen, let me get my laser pointer to green. If you see, sorry, pointer, if you see that availability zone is something that we call an availability zone is made up of more data centers. It's made up of one or more data centers. And what we do is each has redundant power network connectivity, and they are housed in separate facilities. Now, this is just one availability zone. So, multiple data centers form one availability zone, and multiple availability zones form one region. So, we are not just given the high for HA and the fault tolerance just depending on the availability zones, but we are also giving you multiple availability zones that form one particular region. Okay, so that is uh, definitely what we have been doing since the start of the AWS cloud platform. And today every region almost has at least three availability zones to begin with, for customers to build applications, that even if, for example, if they build applications in two availability zones, and one of the availability zone for some reason, AWS availability zone, even after so much redundancy, has some issue, the application will still continue running from the other availability zone. And this is what we called as high fault tolerance and high availability of our applications. So when you're going to be doing this hackathon, and when you're going to be working on this particular project, or any project for that matter, not just this hackathon, you will have to think about selecting the right region. Now, if you're talking to someone who's a customer of AWS and they're building an application from which they're going to generate revenue, a lot of their customers are going to be in India, then it makes sense to use the Mumbai region, right? Or if that customer, so that's where the application latency will be the lowest. The second is, if you are building applications, for example, you're building some kind of financial application and you have to govern with RBI laws of storing financial data in India itself, then you would again host this application in the Mumbai region. The third criteria for selecting a region would be, like, for example, you check the region table. Okay, so in the region table you would find a lot of services from AWS are available at almost all regions, but sometimes new services which may be in preview or which may be just being launched, they may not be available in all regions. So if you want to experiment or you want to play with these services, you may have to go into that region where they are available, and it's not like a big deal of going anywhere, just couple of clicks and you're in that region, but you may want to do that. So you can check the region table for that. And the last thing, this is typically for people who are building projects and who are just playing around, or learning the cloud itself. I would urge you to look at the AWS services pricing. Now, what that means is, see, if first three criteria are not something that you have to adhere to, then you can definitely use one of the cheapest regions of AWS. Now, each region has its own pricing, right? So you can use the cheapest region that AWS has, and you can start experiment there. So, for example, it could be US East 1 or North Virginia, which even I use for my experiments, so that I'm not being cost a little bit extra, but I'm not being cost that for experimenting. I could host my production in Mumbai region, but I could still have my dev environment in US East 1. And something we launched very recently. So if you have been using AWS for a while, don't forget to check out the enabling and disabling regions. It's a good way to stop people from going and creating things in the regions that you don't look for and start billing for it. So just go ahead and disable regions that you don't need, and you don't have to worry about someone going there and creating instances there. So I'm just going to skip CloudFront a bit because it is a bit a bigger topic, but I do want to tell you that there is something called as CloudFront, which is a CDN network. So if you have been using applications for global reach, you would use something like a caching for your static and dynamic content at the edge level. So this is CloudFront. And there is also a global network that AWS uses for all its regions. And there is something called as Direct Connect, which is useful for a lot of enterprises to have direct connectivity from their maybe office or from their data centers to the AWS cloud. Now that's about global infrastructure, right? So let's quickly look at the AWS products and services. Yes. Now, this may be a bit tiny on your screen, so don't worry. These are not names of AWS services. It's just a way for me to mentally put a model of how you can navigate through the AWS platform. Okay. So so here it's saying infrastructure. So I'll have my green pointer so you can, if you cannot read the text, I can always read it out. So right now, the green text is saying infrastructure, regions, availability zones, and points of presence, which is CloudFront. So we already talked about infrastructure, right? So this is how you build. Once you know what is infrastructure, once you know what is regions and availability zones, you move on to core services. Now, AWS has few core services on which everything else that AWS has, all the services that AWS has, is built on the core services. So AWS uses its own services to build new services, right? So we eat our own food, or we preach what we teach. I think sometimes I miss that, but yes, we use our services to build new services itself. So you should know the core services, and I will try to uh, explain few of the core services today, because then sorry, because then it will help you understand how the cloud base is, the fundamentals of cloud, and then you can start applying the same principles to all the managed services. So what are the core services? There are services in compute, there are services in storage, there is networking on which everything else sits on, and there's databases, and the end is the CDN, or the one we talked about, CloudFront. Then there is security. Now remember, when cloud started, it was someone else's data center. You're storing your data into someone else's data center, right? So people had lots and lots of concerns about security, and how secure is the cloud. But over the time, people have realized that yes, cloud is much much more secure than your own data centers, because AWS has been taking a lots and lots of efforts to ensure that we secure our data centers, yes, secure data, yes, and also ensure that our customers understand our security principles. And we publish these documents online so that customers can talk to the auditors or talk to third party regulators and understand that AWS is very very secure. And you as a customer can use a lot of security stuff. So I do have a couple of slides, so we'll talk about it then. Then there are a lot of DevOps related services, there are a lot of analytics services, there are a lot of mobile services, IoT, machine learning, migration related services. So there are lots of services on the AWS platform. A lot of people ask me this, right? Hey, I am a developer. Is AWS for me? Or hey, I am not a developer. Is AWS for me? Or I am into networking, or I'm into machine learning, or I'm a data engineer. Is AWS for me? I'm going to say yes. AWS is for everyone because it supports a lot of different technologies on the platform, right? So you have to pick and choose what services you want to use for your experiment, for your use case, for your project that you want to do, right? So it is you who can pick and choose. These are like Lego blocks. Just pick them, make your own toy out of it, and you're happy, right? So use these as that. And the second important thing, use AWS as a complementary tool or a technology. What I mean by that is, if you're a developer and if you've been developing in Python or Java or whatever language out there, there will be an SDK on the AWS platform. Use that SDK, use your knowledge of Python and build something out of it. Don't just dive into saying, hey, I want to learn AWS, let me pick an AWS project. It's going to be a bit more difficult for you to learn. So, what you know, for example, you could be into containers or you could be in Kubernetes, right? And so you can try seeing how you can do Kubernetes on the AWS platform. And that way you will learn the platform much faster than you going and saying, I want to find out a project on AWS and doing that. Use your own knowledge, complement that on AWS, or how would you do that on AWS? And that is much, much easier. How do you access AWS? First thing is there's a management console, which I will show you in the demo. There is a command line tool. If a lot of you don't like working with console and don't want to have a web interface, but you're good with scripting, you're good with command line tools, go ahead use that. If you're using a lot of IDEs, I do have mention of what IDEs, but there are a lot of IDE supports as well. As I mentioned, there are a lot of software development kit support as well. So we support a lot of programming languages that are available in the market today. So go ahead, you can use these in your application and use the AWS APIs in your application to build something out of it. And finally, infrastructure as code, or CloudFormation and other services. What is free tier? Now, if you've created your AWS account in the last 12 months, so there are three things to free tier. Okay. Normally, a lot of people only think this is free tier. Okay. The free tier has three things. So if you have created your account in last 12 months, you get a 12-month free tier where not everything is free. Sorry, we cannot do that. But few items like few resources or few services are free. So for example, 750 hours per month of Linux or Windows T2 micro or T3 micro instance is free. Okay, but if you extend beyond 750 hours, you go to 752 hours, you're going to start being billed for those 2 hours, right? So use this very cautiously how you're using the free tier on the AWS platform. There are a few services that are always free, regardless if your account is new or it's old. There are a few services that will always be free. For example, with AWS Lambda, which is a serverless service, 1 million requests will be free per month. Anything beyond that, you will start paying for that. And there are a few trials that we do as well on the platform. So this is the link, and section, if you may copy the link as well on the chat. This is the free tier link where you can check out what is free, what is not, etc. So what are these compute options? So let's go a bit deeper into products. I won't be covering all because I'm already halfway mark and I do want to show you some demo. So there are three compute options on the platform. Okay, the first is EC2, which is like having your own virtual machines or own virtual servers, your own Linux, Windows, or even the recent one, Mac operating system on the AWS platform, right? So these are virtual servers on the platform. The second is if you're into containers, if you're a person who is on the containers bandwagon, this is the section for you. There are a lot of technologies on the AWS platform for container management and orchestration of containers on the AWS virtual servers. And the third one is serverless technologies. So I will not be going deeper into serverless because that's something happening in our next webinar. So don't miss that. Uh, but there are serverless technologies on the AWS. And I have a little bit of slide where I can compare when to use which one or why would you use which technology, right? Let me remove this green thing on the slide. But if you have to think about EC2, so let's start talking a bit more on the virtual servers because trust me, a lot of customers even today start with virtual machines because come on, virtual machines on EC2. EC2 is the service name, Amazon EC2 Elastic Cloud Compute, but or Compute Cloud. I always miss that. But EC2 is the basic core service. So if you know EC2, there's lots in EC2 to offer as well. So how do you know what is the right uh, type of machine that you want to select on EC2? There are a lot of categories. Like it could be a compute intensive machine, it could be a memory intensive machine. Do you want to have an AWS or an Intel processor, or do you want to have certain type of storage? Do you want GPUs? Do you want what kind of size do you want, and what kind of storage options do you want? So there are lots and lots of storage options, even lots of choices on the processors as well, right? So recently, if you want to read more, we have also launched second version of Graviton on the AWS platform, so you can go ahead and read about that as well. So what do you do in EC2, right? As a terminology. The first thing is something called as Amazon Machine Image or AMI or AMI, whatever you want to call it, Amazon Machine Image. Now think about this as your ISOs. I don't know how many of you are young or old enough to know that when we had CD drives, we used to have ISO images of our machines, and we used to take that as a backup and go ahead and put it in some other laptop or some other desktop and start running from there. So think of AMI as an ISO. It has all the configuration for your virtual machine. Could be Linux, could be Windows, could be Mac OS. Now from this ISO, you would create something called as instances. Now its terminology is instances. What we mean is each of this is an individual operating system that is having a configuration that you have defined in the AMI. Okay, and an instance can be started, or it could be in stop mode, or it could be in a running mode as you would configure it. And what you would do is you would launch these virtual machines into the AWS VPC. Okay, let me just roll everything out. So you would create these virtual machines in AWS VPC. VPC is nothing but virtual private cloud. And as the name suggests, it's virtual, it's private. So it's virtual as in virtual is logical, not physical isolation. So it's virtual, private. So it is your own private little cloud inside AWS. Okay. And you can create subnets, you can create DMZs, the same way you could create in data center, the same way networking you can do in the AWS platform. So you could have a virtual private cloud and where you would create these virtual machines. So you can define, does anyone get access to these virtual machine, or can the instance go out to the internet or not, or can someone reach out? So you can define security and networking capabilities in the VPC. And then you can say what kind of storage does it have. And EBS is one of these storages that you would typically have with your virtual machine. So you could have EBS storage that you can then have snapshots and so on and so forth. From a naming perspective, if you're working on EC2, remember a few things. The first thing is the family. Is it compute intensive? Then it will be C. If it is a RAM intensive or memory intensive, then it will be R, right? If it's general purpose, it is M. I don't know how it is M, but it is M. If it is burstable, then it will be T, right? This is the instance generation. So, this is like versioning. So the initial ones that came where I don't think we had C1, but we did definitely have C4s, and now we have C5s, and the next generation maybe 6.6 that is coming in, and you would have some kind of attribute that you attach to it, and then you would have the size. Oh no, these are like your t-shirt sizes, right? Small, medium, large, extra large, so on and so forth. So this is how you select what kind of virtual machine you need, and each has a different connotation. Like for example, an extra large will have certain CPU and certain memory associated to it, and you could then combine these into double double. So when you're selecting, you could have an C4 8 extra large would be similar to having 8 C4 extra large. Now, why this is important? Imagine having a application or a game running on 8 extra large, okay? And you have this one huge BC machine that is running, awesome. But if you're only using, let's say, 50% of that machine, you're actually wasting price that you're paying for the rest of the 50% of the machine. So in this case, ideally, you could have two 4x machines, or you could have four 2x machines to run the same thing and stop paying. And if you go beyond from 50 to 60% of requirement, you could still start another machine. So that's where we say that instead of getting a huge machine, if you can break it down into smaller machines, it makes it easy to scale out and scale in, right? These are terminologies when you're talking about scaling. So scale out as in add more machines as your as your demand increases, and remove machine when your demand goes down. So you start saving on cost. So let me quickly show you EC2, right? Like I've talked for almost half an hour. You've listened to me for half an hour, and I'm also tired of talking a lot in slides. So let's go to EC2. So this is the AWS management console. Once you get access to it, you can just log into the console, and I will just walk you through how this console you can navigate. The first thing is you click on services. You click on services, you can find the plethora of services, like the 200 services that I mentioned. Now you can either favorite your services, like you could go here and say Lambda is my favorite service and it will get added, or don't want it, you can remove that. If you know that service name, for example, VPC, you type VPC and you will find that VPC there. You can find service, you can find the documentation, you can find lots more features and information, blah, blah, blah here. Let's close this. This is Cloud Shell. This is like command line in the console. This is a new feature. These are some of the notifications that AWS may be sending you about your infrastructure. So have a look at that if that has a number. So please check that out. Then this part is where you can see your account details. If you're part of an organization, if you want to see billing information, you want to sign out of this, you want to see service quotas. Service quota is something like, soft limits on your account. So today, if I have a new account and I want to start 1,000 virtual machines, I won't be able to do that because there are soft limits on your account. Why do we have soft limits? You would say, hey, you said cloud is virtually unlimited. Why do you have limits? The reason is if someone is new to the platform and they don't know what you're doing, and by mistake, if they start 1,000 machines, and then they will have to pay for those 1,000 machines, right? So to ensure these things don't happen, we do have soft limits, which soft I mean is you can raise a request and get them increased. Hard limits are limits which cannot be increased. So some of the services do have hard limits. So do check out the documentation for the soft and hard limits. How do you check out documentation? Just search, come on, like AWS documentation, and you can find documentation. Or a good tip is always write AWS in front, so you can find a lot more information there. And let's say I want to see about VPC, I don't know, route table. this is what I want to see, or route table limits, or something like that, and just search for that, and you would get that kind of information. So lots of information is available for AWS on the internet, but put in those keywords and you would hopefully land into the correct one. The next is regions. I told you, right? You can switch regions very quickly. Like this is right now me in the cheapest region available. So if you're experimenting, select this region. But you could also go to Mumbai. Like I want to host something in Mumbai region. That's it. Now I can start using EC2 in Mumbai, and I will start creating virtual machines in the Mumbai region. Let me go back to my region, but you can see all the regions, and we started scrolling down. And if you want support, like if you want more information, you want to sign up for support, you want documentation, training, blah blah blah, all is available here. So I've already opened the EC2 dashboard. This is what EC2 dashboard looks like. You can just scroll on the left. Normally all the services will have some panel on the left, so you can navigate to different things on the left side, and the dashboard will have some orange bright thing what you could create in that particular service itself. I can find more information here. It's too much info for you on the first day. So let's go and launch the instance itself. Okay, I have to tell you a couple of things. Just taken a note of that. Now, you remember I talked about Amazon Machine Image, or AMI. So here I can see Amazon Machine Images that are available as quick start. So I could select Amazon Linux too. Yes, this is Amazon's Linux version. Something similar to CentOS, and we recommend customers using this on the platform because it's more optimized for the platform itself. If not, you can select any other. We have CentOS, we have Red Hat, we have, let me show you how many. So we have lots of different operating system options on the platform, right? And this is the newest addition. Like AWS is the first cloud to actually have Mac on the AWS platform. Yes, it is a little bit expensive, so please do take care when you're launching these virtual machines, and delete them if you're not going to need them. Okay, and you can go ahead and select any of these. Right now, I'm just going to say I want x86, or do I want ARM-based instances. I'm going to go with x86. Select, and I'm going to select the instance type. Remember, I talked about C5N extra large. So this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to select a family. So I could select T2, T3, C5, like compute, or do I want, oh God, you can just keep scrolling further low, but I'm just going to go with the free tier eligible, that is T2 micro. My account is not in free tier anymore, but I still prefer doing that. And so what does this T2 micro have? It has one vCPU. One vCPU is virtual CPU cores and not physical cores. There is a what do you say, formula for understanding that, but uh, take it as half of a physical core is what a virtual CPU core. Then how much memory I need? Is it EBS backed? It's a storage. What kind of network performance am I looking at? Next, you can say how many instances you want. Right now, I just want one, so let's go with one. This is the VPC selection where I have already created a virtual private cloud. If not, you can just click here, go through the wizard, create new virtual private cloud for you. I've selected the public subnets and private subnets. Unfortunately, today I won't be able to go deeper into it. I have done few sessions where I've gone deeper into the architecture of VPC. Ping me or check out my YouTube channel if you want to go deeper into these topics. And I've clicked on public subnet, and I'm saying these are enabled. Yes. Do I want to assign public IP? Yes. Just skipping a lot more information here. IAM, we'll talk about IAM, blah, blah, blah. And this is something interesting. Okay. So user data. Now, when your virtual machine is booting, what I want to do is when this virtual machine is booting up, I want it to automatically install or update. First of all, I want it to update its own operating system. I wanted to install HTTPD, and I want to start HTTPD. So what essentially should happen is that instance, when it's booting up, it should automatically install these things and start. I should be able to go to that IP address that it is going to give me, and yeah, I should be able to access the application. Now you can further automate a lot of things here. You could automate that. Hey, it goes and downloads some files from somewhere, or it goes and triggers a CI/CD pipeline or something like that, where you can automate a lot of stuff if you want to do it. I'm just going to keep it simple. Then I'm going to say add storage. Now I can add new volumes, like, if it's Windows, it's C drive, D drive, it's Linux, you can add more mount points inside of different volumes you want. I'm just sticking with the default size, but I can also change it if I need. Okay. And I can also say, do I need encryption or not? And you can have different types of volumes, depending on your use case. But right now I'm just going with general purpose, which is a sweet spot. Adding tags, so I can just say, hey, what is the purpose of this one? And I'm just going to say this is for demo. Okay. And it's going to apply that to tagging is just to understand what this virtual machine is for. Now I can create a new security group. Now security group is something you could think of as a firewall. Okay. So you may need a firewall and it's a stateful firewall. There is stateful, there is stateless. If you're doing certifications, do read about it. Stateful is security group. Stateless is NACL or network access control list. What I'm doing with stateful firewall here, instead of me going inside the virtual machine or going inside the operating system and typing, hey, IP tables do this or IP tables do that, I'm having a layer of security group outside on these virtual machines where instantaneously these firewall rules are applied to all the virtual machines in your security group. So what I'm going to do is I could say I want to SSH into this virtual machine, or I would say I want to have HTTP traffic going into this virtual machine. I'm just going to select a one I have already created, and here I've given HTTP traffic for everyone. Yes, and I've said SSH for this IP address. Now I can go and change it later. I'll see if I don't have that kind of time today, but I can also go ahead and change this. But this is my IP address, so only I can log into this virtual machine. Please, this I am going to mention it in security section, but please don't keep it open to the entire world. You have higher chances of getting hacked. Okay. uh, so go ahead, everything is blah blah blah, everything looks good, and then I have something called as a key pair. Now what do you need a key pair for? See, because this is a fresh new virtual machine, we can't give you username passwords here. For Linux we are doing is a key pair. So whenever you're first time trying to access this, create this instance, it will ask you, do you want to create a new key pair or do you want to proceed with an existing one? I already have one, so I will proceed with that. If you don't, then you can always create a new key pair and download the key pair file. I already have this. I acknowledge I have this, and I can use that to log into my virtual machine. So launch instance. Good evening. Okay. Okay, I should have clicked that instance, but it's okay. Sorry, there are lots of virtual machines and it has already gone into pending state. Let me close this. So this virtual machine has gone into pending state. That means it's booting up right now. Once this becomes into running state, you can also see the status check running. Once that is done, we can access that virtual machine. So while that is happening, let me show you quickly what are the details you can see. So it's already being into running state within seconds. You can find the instance ID. Does it have a public IP address? Yes. Does it have a private IP address? Yes. So which VPC it is in? Great. What is it? Okay, Linux. What time did I start it? And lot more information. If I need information on security, like I want to change the IP addresses here, I can do that. Do I want to have networking information? Yes, all of that is possible. Right now it's running status check. So I can just do refresh. One tip, just to refresh a little frequently because then it can see the status updates coming here. We don't push everything on the console, but lots of things keep happening. So if you click refresh, it will refresh all the data. You can also find more information once it goes into running state. Status check is done. Let it refresh. And it will also show you a lot more information of the CPU utilization. If you need memory, you have to put in a script. We don't do that by default because hypervisor doesn't see that by default. What did I just say, hypervisor? Go ahead and read about it. This purpose. Now, if you want to connect to this virtual machine, you just click on connect. And why is my internet acting up? Okay, so you could either click on an SSH client. You could have an SSH client like a terminal in my case. I don't want to log in. It's too late, but you could just copy this. This is already been created and you can just log into it and log into that virtual machine. I could also use directly connected from here as an instance connect. If you want more information, how do you connect? Just click on this info. It will take you, like a lot of people will ask me, how do you connect with WinRecipe? How do I connect with terminal? Everything is documented in detail. Please check out the documents. There is also some more information you can find, like you want to stop this virtual machine or terminate it, right? Stopping will only shut it down. So when people say, oh, you stop that instance, you will stop paying for it. Yes and no. So there are three billing items. There is compute, there's storage, there's network. You may, if you stop an instance, you will stop paying for the compute, you will stop paying for the network, but you will still pay for that EBS storage that you have created. So if you don't need something, just go ahead and create a virtual AMI out of that and terminate it. Okay, get the data out and terminate it, then you will stop paying for it completely. Go to actions, still more information you can find. Sorry, I've zoomed in a lot, and that's why you're seeing it a little bit skewed. But you can find more information about that instance here. Let me quickly open this address in another port, right? Let me show this to you. So right now it won't open because it's HTTPS and have not installed any SSL certificate. You can see that it has installed HTTPD, and that's the HTTPD server that you can find, right? That's the quick EC2 demo. Let me go back to my slides. And for the container landscape, there are a lot of different options. There is ECS, there is EKS. ECS is something that AWS has created 4 5 years ago. It is also a orchestration service that we have. EKS is something that customers kept asking. It's already been 2 years with EKS. Customer said, hey, we are running Kubernetes on AWS. Create a managed service for us, please. And that's when EKS was born. So EKS is more, if you're a Kubernetes person, you would want to check out EKS. If you're just starting with containers, I find ECS a bit little simple than going with the entire Kubernetes platform. So you can check out ECS as well. Uh, there are two beautiful workshops. Do check these links out. It's easy, ecsworkshop.com, eksworkshop.com. I'm not pasting those links because it's easy to remember. Use these if you're a beginner and you want to play with these. Beginner, advanced, and intermediate, all beginner, intermediate, and advanced, all three levels are available. Compute engines, you can either run your containers on EC2 directly in a server full format, if that's a word, and you can also run on something called as Fargate, which is a serverless platform. I did want to show you serverless, but I'll just maybe show it in slides. On serverless platform, and we do also have a container registry. So if you are facing any issues with limits on Docker Hub or something like that, there is also container registry that is available for public images on the AWS platform as well. So you may want to check that out today if you're interested in hosting your own images. I did want to show you Fargate in the console, but just being cautious of time, what I'm going to do is, if you have to work with Fargate, now for this hackathon, you either select Lambda and or you select Fargate. Okay, so you can select both if you want, but it should be at least one. So if you're into containers and you want to do a container-based deployment into a serverless fashion, use Fargate. Okay. If you're a person who doesn't want to do containers, who wants to just work on their code and be able to deploy that code, then go with Lambda as your compute option. You can also use EC2 for any of the services, but make sure you use Lambda somewhere in your entire project. Now, if you're doing Fargate, there are one, two, three, four things that you have to remember about Fargate. Okay, I'm just trying to keep it simple. I know it cannot be this simple, but I'm trying to give you a mental model of what are the things you should look for when you're working with Fargate. The first is a task definition. This is where you define what is your container image, what is the CPU, what is the other requirements for your container image. So you define a task definition in a JSON format, or you can define it in the console. So this is my console. So let me show you task definition. Yes. So for example, Nginx. Okay, I'm just showing a simple task definition for Nginx that I've already defined. And you could either build it here, you can create a new version, or you could define it in a JSON format. So here I'm going to mention a lot more information about what is this CPU, what is the memory requirements for this container, what is the container image, where is it going to be picked up from, what's the port mappings, blah, 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 all the stuff that you need for your container to run. The second is you create a cluster. So you create a cluster in ECS. So you Did I lose that? One second. Ah, so you create a cluster in ECS. So you go to create and you could say, I don't want networking, I don't want, blah, blah. What do I need here? Do I need Linux, Windows? And you can go ahead and give a cluster name, blah, blah, blah. And you can create an empty cluster, just keep everything default and you can create a cluster. I've already created cluster, so this is how the cluster would look like. Once you define a cluster, there are two things you could do. Either from this task definition, remember how we did AMI to instance? Same way, from this task definition, you can define run individual tasks. Okay, so you can run an instantiation of that task definition. So you could run individual tasks, or you could create a service. Go back to your microservices thought process. You could create a service and you could define tasks inside the service. Okay, same task definition. And you could then put them behind a load balancer, that's an AWS service, so that all the requests come to the load balancer and the load balancer then distributes to a different tasks you have in that particular service. So that's simple components of your Fargate service. So you don't have to worry about anything. The service will automatically start adding more tasks. If the demand keeps increasing, the service will automatically add more tasks. If the demand goes down, the service will automatically remove tasks as well. So the final thing in the compute itself is serverless. And serverless is not just Lambda. And that's what I've also mentioned in the hackathon thing. It's not just about using Lambda and you have done serverless. In serverless, there is a lot more. There is like integration services like API gateway, which is like REST or WebSocket APIs, or you could have AppSync, which is like GraphQL APIs. And you could use other services for like queuing and sending notifications or having set functions like state manager kind of services as well. If you know AWS, you already know something called as Amazon S3, which is our simple storage service. It's a really simple storage service. It's just a service for storing everything that you own, and it's quite cheap. Then you have database options. You have DynamoDB, you have Amazon Aurora in a serverless format. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions if you want. The last thing in compute that you have to remember is if you're using EC2, a lot of things will be have to be managed by you, from application code to scaling, from the networking configuration, from patching your servers, blah, blah, blah. So everything you have to do is most, right? What you manage is most when it comes to EC2. As you go up, when you go to ECS and EKS, ECS will take care of the container scaling, it will take care of the scheduling of the containers and so on and so forth. But you still have to worry about how your clusters are going to scale out, how your data source is going to be integrated, a lot of networking information, blah, blah, blah. The more you go up towards our serverless services, you will find that it becomes this part of what you manage becomes less and less, and what AWS manages becomes more and more. So you can select more of the serverless functions if you want, to have that flexibility. Okay, I don't want to do a lot of infrastructure management. That's not my thing. I'm a developer. I want to code. I want to build my application. Then serverless is the way to go. Feel free to choose any one of like any of these depending on what you've been doing as a customer. We love to give, like, as a Lego block. You can pick and choose. It's not like अच्छा EC2 use कर लिया तो lambda कभी नहीं use करना. Like, that is not the point about this. But the point is, depending on your use case, depending on your team's understanding, you can select what you want to work with it. These are few IDEs. There is Cloud9 as an AWS IDE as well, but these are few IDEs that we support. So if you are using these IDEs and you're already coding something, feel free to add the AWS toolkit into your IDE and start using that. There are a lot of SDKs, as I mentioned, that you can start using. You can use these SDKs in your application. Then that will call the AWS APIs and then, make your applications more smart. This is quick. I'm not going to dive into it, but now I talk to you about EC2. Okay. So you would say, uh, so can I install blah, blah, blah on AWS? Yes, because EC2 is just a virtual machine. You can do whatever you want on the virtual machine. Obviously, not illegal stuff, but but you can do whatever you want to install on the virtual machine as long as that virtual machine supports. You can do it, right? But what happened is over time, customers started thinking that, what, for example, MySQL. Now, when I was quite new in IT industry, MySQL was quite new as well, but it was picking up very fast, and everyone had a MySQL database. And everyone was like, hey, I have a MySQL database, and everyone's installing the MySQL database, everyone's configuring that. And we're doing the same activity over and over again. It was getting irritating that every time I needed a MySQL database, I had to actually run a script or install MySQL and configure it the way I want. And this is what a lot of people were doing, right? Lot of routine maintenance, lot of like patching, and how do I do failover, how do I do backup and recovery. Lot of stuff had to be managed by us. So in a self-managed environment, like for example, if I'm doing it on EC2, then I have to take care of everything, right? So customers came to AWS and said, hey, can you make this more easy for us? Like we don't want to be MySQL administrators. We want to build our application, right? We want to use it as a database. We are not going to be like infrastructure people here. So we want to focus on schema design. We want to focus on queries, what we are running. We want to focus on the performance. We don't want to focus on how do we have our backup strategy, and do we have the right tools for it, and so on and so forth. So AWS came up with services which we call as managed services, where a lot of these things AWS takes care of. Okay. So if you use the service like RDS from AWS, relational database service, which is like MySQL database or PostgreSQL database or SQL Server on AWS platform, AWS will take care of a lot of these things. And you as a customer will only have to worry about your schema design, about your query performance, your optimizations, and so on and so forth. So it takes undifferentiated, because this is not helping your business, right? This is not going to help you generate revenue. This is going to help your business grow. So we are automating a lot of undifferentiated heavy lifting so that customers focus on what they want to do, and that is going to earn them money. So we have a lot of databases on the platform today, from relational to key value to document to in-memory, graph databases, time series databases, ledger databases, and so on and so forth. So you have lots of options to select from. I would suggest go with the simple ones to begin with, and then explore the others, and also find out which use cases fit for which one. Don't just start using relational databases, because that's what's been happening from ages. Now you have lots of options, and in a microservices world, you will have to use the right database for the right use case. So last couple of slides before I dive into a little bit of security and a little bit tips, because you will have a new AWS account if most of you are new to AWS. So I want to give you some tips as well. A lot of analytics services on the platform. A lot of customers have been using AWS for having their own data lake, and having running business intelligence, and having their own analytics on the AWS platform. Lots and lots of services are focused on these aspects, because data is the new oil, right? And there is a huge AWS machine learning stack as well. There are three sections to it. So there are AI services for people who are not data scientists like me, and who just want to use like image comparison or voice, or if you've used echoes, uh, if you've used Amazon Echo, then you know the technology of. Sorry, it took me a minute. But if you used Amazon Echo, then the technology behind Alexa is also something from AWS. You could also start using that in your application if you want building chatbot or something like that. So in this hackathon, if you're trying to build something like a chatbot, or want to have voice based or translation or something like that, use these AI so AI services, and make your application look a bit more fancy. Okay. And there are machine learning services. I don't think that is the purpose of this hackathon, so I'm just going to skip that. For security, please listen to this section, important section in your journey on AWS. Security is a shared responsibility on the AWS platform. So AWS is responsible for physical infrastructure, our data centers, and who we hire there and how we do that. You as a customer can never visit or even know where the data centers. Come on, I as an employee don't know where the data centers are of AWS, because that is how strongly we take confidentiality and privacy on this platform, right? So we take care of everything on the AWS that makes AWS AWS, right? So we'll take care till the hypervisor level, till the virtual machine level. What you install in that virtual machine, or what data you host on the AWS platform, that is your responsibility. Now, I'm not saying that, hey, AWS is saying you use AWS at your own risk. Obviously, anything you use it as your own risk. But what I'm saying is, we are not just saying that because you hosted it and you missed it, it's your responsibility. We are not saying that. What we are saying is, as a customer, you have the flexibility to select what level of security you want. Now, if you are building a project that is not so sensitive in data, that is okay, it's just a dummy project. Maybe you're a student, maybe you're an IT professional, you don't care about security so much. You may want to just go ahead with the basic security, which is fine. If on the other side of the spectrum you're an enterprise or a big custom company, you have personal information or personal health information, and security is your utmost priority, you need to have encryption and firewall and whatnot to be installed, then that is your choice. You can have that kind of security as well, and we give those kind of tools to our customers, so you can use third party tools on the platform. Okay, so that's what shared responsibility model is. Now, security for us or the tools that we give can be around these six criterias, like, what are the users and groups, and how do you detect, how do you do monitoring, how do you protection. So there are a lot of tools that you would use on the platform. If you have a new account, okay, first of all, you may have a root account. Now, what do you mean by root account? Is the email ID that you've used to create your account, right? Generally, I suggest people, if you're working in a team or an organization, use an alias rather than a personal email, because AWS sends a lot of notification, not a lot, but important notices or information to that email alias. We don't want a snoozing person having that email address and never looking at it, right? So have that email address, like choose it properly. Delete the account's access keys, because if someone gets access to that, they can easily get into your account. Read more on what I mean by delete your account's access key. You can find that information easily on the internet. The next is set up IAM. So identity and access management, or IAM, is a service in the AWS platform. It's a global service. So go ahead and create a user for yourself. Don't use this email ID password to log into your account all the time. Use this IAM. Go ahead, attach an administrator policy to it. Use that to log into your AWS platform. Okay. If you have multiple people in your team, don't share this username password. If someone has some grudges, and this has happened, to be very honest, people have grudges and people don't like being removed from a team or something like that. People go ahead and delete everything that is available. So as a good practice, I would suggest create IAM users for everyone. Let everyone have their own access to the cloud, and then as an administrator you can remove or add more permissions as you need. For the enforce multi-factor authentication, you could have a device, or you could use Authy, or you could use Google Authenticator for multi-factor authentication. So with password, it's like giving an OTP to sign in to your account. Okay. Have a strong password, rotate your credentials frequently, and grant least privileges. Like सबको administrator बना दोगे, तो कल कोई भी उठ के कुछ भी कर लेगा, right? So don't make everyone administrator. If there are developers, give them limited access. If people are into databases, give them limited access. A lot of customers will have production, non-production, so they will also try to separate that out. So limited privileges, please. Privilege should be limited. Okay, then it is privilege. Otherwise, it is not. So grant least privileges and use the security policies like I mentioned. Right? Don't use 0.0.0 everywhere. Try and minimize it as much as possible. How do you learn on the AWS platform? There's lots to learn on this platform. As I mentioned, you can go ahead and watch 100 YouTube videos. You can go and attend trainings. But unless you play with the services, unless you do some hands-on, you're not going to learn. Okay. Some people learn well if they're doing certifications. So there's an exam coming. I studied just before the exam. So if you're that kind of person, go ahead and do certifications. I'm not saying that certifications are just for that purpose, or certifications for make sure that this person knows everything, but it pushes you to study a bit. So if you're that person who likes to do that, go ahead and do that. uh, it's good to validate, right? You can train yourself. There's free training from AWS. There's lots of YouTube videos. There's lots of third party, Udemy and a lot of others who have a lot of courses, very cheap as well. Nowadays, everyone's working from home, so it's cheap as well. So go ahead, check those out. Do hands-on labs. If you want AWS to tell you what to do, figure there is something called as ramp up guides, and Saksham can give you the link. Uh, Ramp up guides are based on people. Like if you are a developer, follow this path. If you are an architect, follow this path. If you are into operations, follow this path. So different for personas and different by solutions as well. So if you're into machine learning or if you're into serverless, how do I go ahead and learn about these things? So if you see here, it talks properly, like there's proper step by step guidelines of watch this, read this, watch this, read this, or attend this, so on and so forth. Certifications, yes, there are a lot of certifications. There's foundational, there's associate, there's professional, and there's specialty. Learn for practitioner. If you are into tech, I don't suggest you go ahead and pay for the practitioner exam. This is more for people who are into business or sales or are not techies. If you are into tech, then try to go for some kind of associate examination, or if better, go for professional. You don't have to have an associate to go to professional. You can directly jump into professional or specialty as well. Select the one that makes sense. A lot of people reach out and say, hey, can I do solution architect? Are you a solution architect? Do you have any plans of becoming a solution architect? It is the most done certification, to be honest, because it gives you like big picture thought process of AWS. But if you just want to be someone who's a developer, then I would suggest go for a developer certification. Or if you are a person into machine learning, go for specialty. Okay, architect is good as well. It gives you a big picture thought process rather than just big into that small part. But yeah, don't come asking me these questions. uh, the second next is, what are the different tutorials? Like there are a lot of hands-on tutorials, a lot of 10-minute tutorials. They have marking if it is free or not free on the platform. So you can quickly go ahead and play on the platform. You can also search based on what you want to do. There are different learning paths. Everyone has different way of learning. There is no one size fits all. So please do check out learning paths if you want to know more about how do you learn on the AWS platform. Developer Center, there are a lot of GitHub samples if you're into coding and stuff. You want to, for this hackathon, you want to start with something already there and you want to build and everything, or you want to use something as a template and modify that. Go to GitHub, lots and lots of samples there. Okay, so check those out. That is another tip I would give. Don't start creating everything by hand, like you lose it. You may want to start using some samples and then start modifying those for your use. We have user groups across the world. I just listed the user groups here in SARC that I support with my colleague Soman. We also have our own YouTube channel, and lots of these meetups keep happening. Sign up for the user group near you. Sign up for the India user group as well. Check out the YouTube page. I've given the YouTube link. Uh, Check them out. This is your place. This is your community. This is learning from each other. A lot of heroes we have in our community, whom AWS calls them to be our hero. So there are a lot of serverless heroes. I think we have 3 to 4 heroes in India today. So if you want to find AWS serverless heroes in India, and you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Srushit. He's one of our heroes as well. And the last thing is lots of events. Lots of events are happening on AWS where you can learn about AWS. You can find more information on the platform itself. So check out Summit is coming. I think it's coming in May. That is already being announced. So sign up for it. You'll learn a lot more. So that's me. I do want to see if there is any question, or are people already snoozing. But if there's any question, I'll be happy to take that. Sorry, I've been talking for a while. Let me see. No, no. Are you there, Saksham?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you for saying that. Do we have any questions, or have I lost you? Hello? I think I lost you. Hmm.
If you have any question,
Okay. I did lose you for a minute there.
I'm audible, right?
Yes, yes, you are. You are. Yes. I thought it was. So there was a question initially. Did you answer that or?
Yeah.
So, okay. So that's anyone has any question? I think we had an initial question though. Um, I think yes, this is for IT professionals. If I see the FAQs on the website, it is more for IT professionals.
Yeah. Now it's okay.
Okay, let me just show them
So
the website. Can you share my screen? Maybe someone wants to see the website.
yes,
Oh.
sure.
Okay, so this is my website. I know very few people have left, but um, is it open to all? So yes, if you see, this is what it says on the website. Sorry if that is not happening for a lot of you, but don't worry, we have a lot of hackathons. So follow Scalenza because there are a lot of hackathons that keep happening. And I think Saksham is the best person to talk about the other uh, hackathons that keep happening, and you
Yeah.
can definitely follow Scalenza for that. Sorry if that is something that many people didn't like. Yeah, cool. So if there's no
And
questions,
even
so
we
I
are
think we
having
can wrap up.
another session.
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Talk.
Sure. Yeah. So we have another session of on serverless on 27th next month. So do join at same time 5 p.m.
7th April, at the same time, we have another serverless session. So please do attend that. And with that, I think we can wrap up the session. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming in and just try to build something new on AWS and thank you everyone for coming.